Hey there, welcome to the next section. So this section is all about CSS Flexbox. Flexbox is a new-ish layout module. It's been around for a while, or a couple of years at least, but it wasn't widely adopted and it wasn't widely supported across all the major browsers. But that's now changed, making this a really good time to learn it. So what is Flexbox? Well, according to the docs, I did not write this, it's a more efficient way to lay out, align, and distribute space among items in a container, even if their size is unknown. So what this really means is that the days of hacking together weird, kind of buggy layouts using floats and clear fixes and tables or whatever other tricks you know are over, if you use Flexbox, that is. Flexbox makes laying things out inside of a given box, whether it's a div, a section, a nav, whatever the content is, it makes it much, much easier to distribute it, and not only distribute it in one place, but have it grow or shrink, change depending on the size of the screen. So basically, it makes it very easy to lay things out and to make responsive websites. Things that traditionally were very difficult, like vertically centering content, or having a bunch of children inside of a parent div or a parent box, and having them take up the exact same width and height, even if the width and height is unknown. Those are all very, very doable using Flexbox. But what I will say as a quick word of warning is that there is a little bit of syntax that you have to get used to up front. If you've never come across Flexbox until now, there are a bunch of properties we're going to go over. I've done my best to try and order them in a nice way, fill this section with lots of examples, lots of practical things, but there's no way of getting around the fact that there's just a lot of properties we have to talk about. So that's the only hurdle to using it. Once you actually understand it, it's very simple, it's easy to use, but there's a couple of things you just have to get past conceptually before it starts to click. So with that said, I have a simple visual example here. Imagine that you have three items, these three things here, red, orange, and yellow, representing images or divs or maybe columns of text, anything. Three items. They don't even have to be the same size, but I made them in this case. This is one potential way of arranging them in a container. So they're inside of something else, this little white border here. So what I'm going to show you are some of the ways using Flexbox that we could rearrange this very, very easily. With a single line, I could shift them all over to the right side. Not something that's, incredible that you couldn't do with Flexbox or without Flexbox, but I could also space them evenly across this container with a single line. Or I could take this middle box and make it take up twice as much space as the left and the right boxes, also with a single line. Or I could do something like this. I don't remember, I think this is 8 times as large as what I calculated. Basically, I could make this a lot larger and then have these two other units, columns, whatever these are, on the right side be much, much smaller. But I could also do something crazy and switch to a vertical layout, have columns or a single column instead of a row. Also, just a single little line to do this here. Now, not everything in Flexbox is a single line. That's not the point I'm making. More the point I'm making is that we have a single box filled with three items. These whatever they are, doesn't matter. But using Flexbox, we can arrange them in tons of different ways. Just 3 items. So imagine now that we have multiple items, multiple rows, multiple columns, all the possibilities. But just with 3 items, there's already a lot. And this isn't everything. This is just kind of a quick preview. In fact, I highly recommend that you check out this CSS Tricks, A Complete Guide to Flexbox, if you have any questions, and it just makes a great visual reference. But it's full of diagrams like the ones I've created here, and it really is a great reference. So if at any point you have questions about the properties I'm showing you, you can see already how many properties there are, how many diagrams there are here to illustrate things. Don't let that intimidate you. We're going to go slow and go through all of the important properties in a relatively well thought out order. But just keep this open if you're someone who likes to refer to visual docs. So as I mentioned, all of those potential layouts are things we could do just using Flexbox and without really having to write much code at all. Okay, so before we go on to actually writing code and learning the properties, I just want to give you a heads up, a little roadmap for where we're going. So there are 2 types of properties that we're going to learn. The properties that apply to a container, so the big white box here, and then properties we apply to the individual items inside those containers. We're going to start off by talking about the container properties. There's 5 that we're going to focus on. And along the way, we'll build a couple of little projects, a nav bar, a sidebar, and then we'll move on to flex item properties and build a couple of projects as well. So I'm doing my best to incorporate real-world examples along with the conceptual underpinnings of Flexbox and trying to make that the least boring possible. So without further ado, let's get started talking about container properties.